A good place to start is with the motors and the ESCs that you get in this kit. These motors and ESCs now come with bullet connectors, and so you can easily disconnect and connect them. This is pretty useful, as you must connect the motor cables to the ESC cables in a specific way to ensure the motors spin in the correct direction. The correct connection can be seen in the picture on the screen on the right hand side. So you can see that the motors that spin clockwise must be connected with their wires crossed, and the motors that spin counterclockwise must not have their wires crossed. A good way to ascertain which direction a motor spins is to follow this simple rule. The motor spins in the same direction as the nut unscrews. So if the propeller nut unscrews in the clockwise direction, then the motor therefore spins clockwise. It's a good idea to test the motor spin direction after connection to make sure it's all correct. And you can do this with the aid of a servo tester and a suitable battery. If you do not have a servo tester, you can simply use the radio receiver and radio control. But we have a separate video showing how to do this, so please click on the link on screen to see this video. Now we attach the motors to the arms of the ZMR 250 mini quadcopter. I found that it's a good idea to label the arms in relation to which motor you attach to it for future reference. So we have two clockwise motors and two counterclockwise motors. And so, of course, we label two arms with CW and two arms with CCW. Obviously, make sure to attach the correct motor to the correct arm. You can label the arms in any way you wish. Here I've used some sticky paper that I had lying around. We then, of course, attach the motors to the arms using the small screws provided as shown. Make sure to align the holes in the bottom of the motor with the holes in the arms. And as a small tip, screw all the screws in halfway at first, and then once you have them all in the correct position, you can screw them in securely. Although be careful not to overscrew them, as this can strip them and render them useless. Now that we have all four motors attached to their respective arms, we can get on with most of the frame side of the build. You will notice that there are two bottom plates of the frame. These two are identical to each other, and one top plate which is narrower than the other two. First thing to do at this stage is to attach the red standoffs to one of the bottom plates using the screws provided. The arms will then be sandwiched between this plate and the other bottom plate. Make sure to attach the arms in the correct place corresponding to the image on screen, and this is where the labels on the arms come in useful. So we push the screws through the plate and then push them through the holes in the arm. Even though the holes themselves are not threaded, it's a good idea to actively screw these in with a hex cap screwdriver, as the holes are quite tight. This turned out to be quite useful, as it then holds the arms in place for the next stage. Once we have completed this step with all four arms, it's a good idea to thread the servo cables of the ESCs, the orange, red and brown cable, through one of the conveniently placed holes in the plate. Make sure to thread these cables through the holes nearest the center of the plate on the same side as the ESCs themselves are on. Also make sure to thread them through from the bottom of the plate to the top. We do this to tidy up the build at the latter stage. We can now attach the lower plate. You do this by slotting the screws into the plate, or screwing. When doing this, be careful not to wedge any wires between the two plates, i.e. the red and black cable wires coming from the ESCs. Obviously, as you have slotted the servo cables through the two holes in the upper plate, these will be sandwiched between the two plates, but try to ensure that they are flat rather than vertical when attaching the lower plate. Also keep in mind that the ESCs will be attached to the arms of the quad, and so please ensure that the servo cables are not pulled too far through the holes in the plate. Once the screws are through the bottom plate, you then secure the plate with the nuts provided. It's useful to have a hex cap screwdriver with a socket driver to make this application easier. When securing with the nuts, ensure that you attach them correctly, i.e. with the narrow part facing away from the plate. You should know you've done it correctly, as they will be easy to screw on by hand at first. We now have the majority of the frame built, and we move on to preparing the battery cable, as there isn't a pre-soldered cable in this kit. The picture on screen shows what we're aiming for, and we first tin the loose wire that is provided in the kit. This simply means coating the exposed wire with solder. Once we have done this for both the red and black wires, we must now solder them to the XT60 connector. We first apply solder to the connector, and then we push the wires into the ports using the soldering iron. Make sure to connect the red wire to the positive port and the black wire to the negative port as marked on the XT60 connector. Use plenty of solder and make sure the wire is soldered securely once finished. Try pulling the wires with a small amount of force and it should not become undone. We then use the heat shrink provided by slipping it over the connections and applying heat. We now move on to soldering the ESC power cables onto the power distribution board, as well as the battery cable that we've just made. There are a few things that we need to know before we head into the soldering. Firstly, we will be attaching the power distribution board onto the underside of the ZMR 250 frame. We therefore have to be careful as to which pads we solder each ESC power cable to so that everything fits nicely. We also have to make sure that we solder the correct wires to the correct pads on the power distribution board. There are positive pads and negative pads, and these are marked with a small positive and minus sign. Make sure to attach the red wires to the positive and the black wires to the negative. On screen is a diagram that shows which pads we will connect the ESC power cables to. This diagram also shows the connection between the ESCs and the flight controller, but we can ignore this for now. We can now get on with the actual soldering. We must first add a dab of solder to the pad, then tin the ESC power cable as we did with the battery cable. We then attach the power cable to the pad by placing the wire on the pad and heating it through with the soldering iron. The solder will melt and the exposed wire will be attached to the pad. Once again, make sure that you do not have a cold solder joint and that the connection is secure. Once we have completed the soldering, we can secure the power distribution board to the frame with the zip ties provided in the kit. This step is fairly straightforward, but there are a few things to look out for. Firstly, avoid trapping the power cables inside the zip ties when applying, as we don't want any severed ESC power cables. Slip the zip ties around only one of the bottom plates for more security and thread up through the hole in the power distribution board. Before threading the zip ties through, it's a good idea to bend the tip, and this makes the job of threading it through the power distribution board more. At first, do not tighten the zip ties around the power distribution board, as we can then get the board in the exact position that we want. We want the board to be in the center of the frame. So once we have it in the center, and we've double checked that no wires are caught underneath the zip ties, we can then tighten the ties. Once we have done this, we must then cover the power distribution board with electrical tape. Unfortunately, this is not provided in the ZMR 250 kit, but it can be purchased easily from online shops such as eBay. We do this to ensure that the board doesn't short circuit at any point. Try to surround each solder joint with the tape as much as possible to create an almost watertight seal. We now need to secure the ESCs onto the arms of the frame. We again do this with some of the zip ties provided in the ZMR 250 kit, and we simply put one zip tie around the middle of the ESC and the arm. Be sure to fold any excess cables underneath the ESC before tightening the zip tie, and ensure that no cables impede the motor in any way. We then cut the excess zip tie remaining. Once all the ESCs are secure, we move on to installing the CC3D flight controller. The best way to do this is by using the 3M double-sided mounting foam that is included in with the CC3D. Be careful in regards to the orientation of the board when you stick it to the frame. The best way of mounting it is actually contrary to the arrow that is on the CC3D flight controller. We mount it so the arrow is actually pointing to the side of the quad rather than to the front of it. We mount it in this way as we need to be able to access the USB plug, which is on the side of the CC3D board, when we have completed the build. Placing the USB plug to the side of the quad is therefore the best option. Now we come to plugging the servo wires of the ESCs into the CC3D flight controller. These are the orange, red and brown cables. This process requires a bit of concentration as we must plug the correct wire into the correct port on the CC3D. We must also plug all the servo cables in the correct orientation, but we'll get to that later. On screen now is a picture labeling the four motors 1 through 4. The ESC servo cable connected to the first motor must be connected to the CC3D port labeled 1, and so on. It's therefore fairly intuitive, but you must make sure that you do connect the correct cable to the correct port. We must now take care to plug in the servo cables in the correct orientation. You can see that on the CC3D board, the pins are labelled with a 0, a plus, and a minus. The orange wire must be plugged into the 0 pin, the red wire must be plugged into the plus pin, and the brown wire must be plugged into the negative pin. This order is essential, and so please make sure that this is all correct. Once you've done this for all four servo wires, you should get something that looks like this. At this point, we need to position the battery cable where we want it when the build is completed. We will thread the cable connector first through the hole nearest the power distribution board so that it comes out to the top of the frame. We do this so that connecting the battery later presents no problems. We now move on to connecting the receiver to the CC3D flight controller. The cable we use for this process is included in with the CC3D. We first insert the cable into the input port on the CC3D, which is the one facing the back of the quad. This can only go in one way due to the pin positions, so if you find that it does not go in easily, do not force it and try it the other way. Make sure the cable is securely connected once you have inserted it. We now connect the other end of the cable to the receiver itself. A little more attention is needed here as we have to get the right connection order, and as with the servo wires on the motor, we have to connect the wires in the correct orientation. We first start with the white, red and black cable. White is for signal, red is for voltage and black is for ground. This cable plugs into the first row of pins in the receiver, and we have to make sure that it's plugged in with the white cable facing upwards. We then plug in all the remaining wires. Make sure to follow the colour order of the cables as they appear in the CC3D connector as we plug them into the receiver. The colour order should therefore run as white, blue, yellow, green, yellow, black. When plugging in these cables, please ensure that you plug them in with the wire facing upwards, i.e. on the same column of pins as the white cable. So we now have the receiver connected to the CC3D flight controller, and we now simply need to secure the receiver to the frame. We've done this here with some sticky back Velcro, and this will be sufficient to hold the receiver as it will also be wedged quite securely within the frame. So we attach one side to the receiver, one side to the frame, and simply stick the two together. You can see that it's also held in place by the red standoffs. We can now attach the top plate to the red standoffs. We attach the plate with the small screws left over, and once this is done, we can secure the battery in place on top. We do this with the Velcro strap provided in the kit, and it is a good idea to place the battery as central as possible on the top plate for good balance. When tightening the Velcro strap, it's a good idea to also secure the battery cable in this, so it's not loose and possibly in danger of being cut by propellers. You can do this by folding the cable against the battery itself. We can then plug in the battery to see if everything is powered as it should be, and some LED should come on the CC3D board. At this point, all we need to do in terms of the build is to attach the propellers. However, before you do this, it is a good idea to complete the configuration of the CC3D board on your computer. We have created a separate video going through the details on this, and the link is now on the screen. After completing the configuration, we can attach the props. We need to be aware that there are two different types of propellers, counterclockwise and clockwise spinning ones. These are of course associated with the counterclockwise and clockwise motors. We therefore need to attach the correct propeller to the correct motor. You will find that the propellers provided in the kit have either 5030R or 5030 marked on them. We need to attach a propeller marked with 5030R to the top left and the bottom right. Subsequently, we need to attach a propeller marked with 5030 to the top right and the bottom left motors. So, to actually attach them, all you need to do is unscrew the nut that's on top of the motor, slot the propeller over the nut and then screw the nut back on over the prop. You can then tighten the nut with a thin screwdriver or something similar. There are two different colours of propeller in the kit, and it's a good idea to have the front two propellers as one colour and the back two propellers as another. This is useful for getting the orientation of your cord when it's in the air. So there we have it. Once we've configured the CC3D board and attached the propellers, we can get out there and start flying. Thanks for watching, and if you do have any questions about this build, please see the DroneTrest guide that accompanies it, and you can post your questions there. Thanks a lot.